July 30th, 1985 was a hot, sultry day in Toronto, Canada. Little 8-year-old Nicole Morin left her penthouse apartment on the 20th floor to meet her friend in the lobby for a swim date. Nicole never arrived and has not been seen or heard from since. Welcome to Case 2 of Unjust Crimes. My name is Michelle, and today I will be telling you about the abduction of Nicole Morin. I just wanted to add a small disclaimer to my videos and say that I mean no harm or disrespect to the victims or families of those I may talk about. This is a case that I have been keeping tabs on most of my life because I kind of have a weird connection to the case. Back in the 80s, my best friend lived in an apartment building adjacent to Nicole's, and they were friends. They played outside together and even attended the same church. As you can imagine, Nicole's abduction had a major impact on my friend. I have been hearing about this case and Nicole since I was about 14 years old. That's when I met my best friend. What happened to Nicole had a major impact on how my friend has raised her kids, and we still talk about Nicole today and wonder what happened to her. I've been looking into Nicole's disappearance for years and have always wanted to put all the information I have come across into a video, so I hope I can do it some justice. Nicole Louise Morin was born on April 1st, 1977. Nicole was the only child of Art and Jeanette Morin. Nicole had been living with her mother in a 20th floor penthouse apartment in the Etobicoke area of Toronto. Her parents were separated at the time and her father lived nearby. Now, Toronto is the most populous city in Canada and the fourth most populous city in North America. But back in the 80s, Toronto was still considered a safe place, as was the neighborhood Nicole lived in. Described as having brown hair and brown eyes, Nicole was 4 feet tall and weighed 51 pounds. Nicole was just the cutest little girl with a toothy grin and a gap in her front 2 teeth. Nicole was described by her dad, quote, "She was taking swimming lessons and dancing lessons, ballet and jazz, and liked to go to McDonald's to have some fun, and she loved Ontario Place. She was just a normal, beautiful little child," unquote. Nicole was also described as liking going to fairs and the circus and was known to be wary of strangers. Childhood friends remember Nicole as a happy-go-lucky and fun-to-be-around kid. Nicole liked to use her imagination. She liked to play outside, and she liked to swim in the pool that was for her building. Just a normal kid growing up in the 80s. I think it's safe to say that Nicole's abduction is the case that stole the innocence of the 80s from the Toronto area, if not all of Canada. Up until then, kids played outside, and their parents didn't really need to worry about them. It was just a different time. I remember it well. I'm a child of the 80s, and I remember the freedom we had and how we just didn't need to feel scared about things like this. I remember spending hours upon hours playing outside throughout the neighborhoods with no adult supervision. Heck, I even walked to school in kindergarten. But Nicole's abduction changed how people parented. The innocence of the time was ripped away. So, on July 30th, 1985, at approximately 10:30 a.m., Nicole went down to the lobby of her building to pick up the mail. She returned to the apartment to get ready for a planned swim date with a friend. The pool was located in the rear of their building complex, but before leaving the apartment, she spoke to her friend via the intercom and said she would meet her in the lobby in a few minutes. Nicole left her apartment at about 11 a.m. wearing a peach-colored, one-piece bathing suit, green hairband, and red canvas shoes. She carried a plastic bag containing a white t-shirt, green and white shorts, suntan lotion, hairbrush, a peach-colored blanket, and a purple beach towel. 15 minutes later, The friend buzzed her apartment to ask why Nicole had not met her yet. Nicole's mother, Jeanette, who was busy working in her daycare home, which she ran out of her apartment, assumed that Nicole had gone to the pool herself or was just playing with other children at the rear of the complex. But after some time, Jeanette realized something was very wrong and reported Nicole missing at 3 p.m. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, why would her mother let her go to the pool by herself, and why did it take her mother so long to report her missing to the police? Well, like I've previously said, it was a different time, and it was actually quite common for kids to have more freedom back then. And Nicole's mom was busy. She was running a daycare home with lots of small kids running around. So for me, it's not that surprising that it took her a few hours to realize something was wrong. At that time, anyways. Maybe if this happened today, I could see it as odd, but not back then. Now, that's just my opinion and me speaking of my own personal experience growing up in the 80s. The Toronto police reacted immediately, and in the days and weeks to follow, they launched one of the biggest missing person investigations in Canadian history. A 20-member task force was formed, and more than 25,000 man-hours were invested in looking for Nicole. Despite these incredible efforts, no physical evidence has ever been found to this day. Police searched all the apartments in Nicole's apartment complex, knocking on every door in Nicole's 429-unit complex, and entered every apartment even if there was no answer when they knocked. Immediately, roadblocks were set up, and police drove around in police cars with PA systems to inform the community of the search. These officers were driving around giving audio descriptions of Nicole, but still, Nicole had simply vanished when she left her apartment. A woman who lived in the building identified Nicole from a photograph, leading police to determine that Nicole had traveled down the elevator and entered the lobby. But from there, no evidence has ever been found as to Nicole's whereabouts. It's important to note here that there is no concrete proof that Nicole ever reached the lobby, or even the elevator for that matter. It is possible Nicole didn't make it to the elevator, as it is also possible that she did make it to the elevator, and maybe even the lobby, just as it's possible she got off the elevator on any floor between her floor and the lobby. We simply don't know what happened to Nicole after she left her apartment. Her dad, Art Morin, has once said, quote, "We don't know if she ever made it to the elevator. She just left the door, walked down the hall, and that's it." Unquote. The day after Nicole disappeared, additional officers were brought in consisting of mounted horsemen, marine units, helicopters, and foot patrols. Police began combing the area near Highway 27, which is in the vicinity of the apartment building. Tracking dogs were brought in to explore the building's underground garages, utility rooms, storage units, and sump pump rooms, but still, nothing was found. More than 900 neighborhood residents joined the search, and the newly formed Toronto Crime Stoppers took on this disappearance as its first significant case. Crime Stoppers posted a $1,000 reward, printed posters, and produced a video reenactment of Nicole's last known movements, which aired on TV several weeks later. A witness reported seeing a mysterious woman on Nicole's floor holding a notebook. The woman was described as approximately 35 years old, 5 feet 5 inches to 5 feet 7 inches tall, with a slender build, a very fair complexion, with dark blonde, shoulder-length hair parted on the left. The woman was reportedly wearing a white skirt with a black pattern, a white or cream-colored short-sleeved blouse, open at the neck, and white or cream-colored high-heeled shoes. Now, police had distributed a flyer with a sketch of this woman because they wanted to talk to her as a witness, not as a suspect, but as a possible witness to what had happened to Nicole that day. But this woman has never been identified. The Toronto Star printed 6,000 copies of a poster showing Nicole's picture and the phone number of the Metro Toronto Police. As well, 3,000 copies of a watercolor sketch of Nicole were distributed to the police departments, post offices, and local stores, but still nothing came up. In November, 4 months after Nicole vanished, a search turned up a plastic bag containing a couple of items of clothing and a newspaper which was dated July 31st, 1985, and this newspaper had Nicole's school picture on the front. Now, I could not find out if this had any real significance to Nicole's abduction, but still, I guess it is suspicious, and it has been noted in several of the articles that I have read about Nicole's disappearance. Also, by November of 1985, police had questioned about 6,000 individuals and offered a $100,000 reward for Nicole's safe return, a reward that still stands today. As well, all family members and acquaintances were cleared from suspicion. And while Nicole's abduction may now be considered a cold case, the Toronto Police and missing child organizations continue to work the case and have made a big effort to keep Nicole's case in the public eye throughout the years. Several video reenactments of Nicole's last known movements and age-enhanced photographs have been released throughout the years. In 2001, Toronto Crime Stoppers sent out an age-enhanced photograph of Nicole as a woman in her mid-20s to more than 1,000 Crime Stoppers programs in 17 countries via the internet. In 2007, a television reenactment was done for DTA's Most Wanted. For the 29th anniversary of Nicole's disappearance in 2014, the Toronto Police Video Unit produced a reenactment video which was also screened at Mac's convenience stores throughout the province of Ontario. For the 30th anniversary of the disappearance in 2015, Toronto Police organized a 5K run called Nicole's Run at Centennial Park in Etobicoke. The event included a candlelight vigil. In 2019, on the 34th anniversary of the disappearance, the Toronto Police's Missing Persons Unit released an age-enhanced picture of Nicole, suggesting what she might look like in her early 40s. Child Find Ontario has also tried to maintain public awareness of the case by arranging for Nicole's picture, physical description, and age-enhanced photographs to appear on electronic screens in Esso gas stations, billing envelopes from Rogers Cable, and the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, Toronto Transit Commission display screens, and on the back of transport trucks. Interestingly, it was revealed shortly after Nicole went missing that her dad had found one of her notebooks, and in this notebook, Nicole had airily written, "I'm going to disappear." Now, did this mean anything? We don't know. Or was it just the silly writings of a young girl? We'll probably never really know. Nicole's mom, Jeanette, believed that Nicole had been murdered, saying in 1985, quote, "I know someone's killed her. I can just feel it," unquote. Meanwhile, Nicole's dad, Art, would say in a 1995 quote, "I would rather keep on thinking that she's alive somewhere and one day things will come together," unquote. Nicole's dad, Art, has spent a good part of his life looking for his little girl, going so far as leaving his job, setting up an office, and hiring a private investigator. Art Morin searched and searched for clues for his missing daughter in Canada and the United States, but unfortunately he would never find Nicole or even really any clues. Art and Jeanette had got back together after Nicole initially went missing, but unfortunately they permanently separated in 1987. Jeanette also has done her part throughout her life to find Nicole, even consulting with a psychic in Calgary, but I could not find any information on what this psychic had to say. And sadly, Jeanette Morin died in 2007, never knowing what happened to her little girl. Art Morin still lives in the Etobicoke area, but doesn't talk publicly about the case anymore as he finds it too painful. In 2004, researchers for a Belgian organization known as, sorry, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but the Fondation Princess de Croix et Massimo Lancelotti announced that they had tentatively matched photographs of Nicole seen on a Canadian police website with pictures on a Dutch website that advocates for sexually abused children. Using biometrical analysis, the researchers claimed a strong resemblance between Nicole and a child in a pedophile network in Zandvoort. I mean, it is possible that Nicole didn't end up in a sex trafficking ring. As we know, these things happen more often than we'd like to think. In July 2014, police launched the hashtag #FindNicole social media campaign to mark the 29th anniversary of Nicole's disappearance. They released a reenactment video that documented her last known movements in hopes of jogging people's memories. And it worked, because this reenactment would prompt a person who reported a tip back in 1985 to recall the police about her tip from 1985. So let's go back to 1985 for a second. It was the day or two after Nicole vanished when a little girl, not much older than Nicole, was feeding horses with her mom when they both heard high-pitched screams coming from the woods. This little girl would say it was the sound of another little girl pleading for her life, saying, "Stop, please, you're hurting me," and then silence. "Oh my God," the witness' mother had said, "it's that little girl who was taken from Toronto." The neighbors had heard it as well. The little girl's mother called the local OPP, or the Ontario Provincial Police, to tell them of the piercing screams she and her daughter had just heard in the woods. 2 or more neighbors had made similar reports as well. The area was searched back in 1985, but nothing was found. Now let's fast forward again to 2014, and this little girl was now grown up, and she had seen the reenactment, and it prompted her to call the Toronto police herself about what remains seared in her memory. Quote, "I still have nightmares. I'll never get over it." Unquote. She felt she had to reach out to the Toronto police again because, quote, "I truly believe I heard Nicole being killed, and it still haunts me to this day." Unquote. Following this tip, nearly 30 years later, on October 28, 2014, Ontario police resumed the 1985 search for Nicole on Horseshoe Valley Road, which is 20 kilometers north of Barrie, Ontario. Police were hoping advances in search equipment may turn up more information. Unfortunately, police found nothing conclusive. To this day, 3 full-time officers continue to work Nicole's case. Police continued to sift through old leads and new, reinvestigating persons of interest and re-examining the case using police techniques that have evolved more than 3 decades later. What do you think happened to Nicole? There are several theories out there, but I will just mention a few of the most common, or most likely, I guess you could say. First and foremost is the theory that someone in the building at the time, either a tenant, a visitor, someone working on the apartments, or so on, took Nicole and did God knows what with her. It's very possible, probably even most likely, in my opinion, but there were no cameras or video surveillance in the halls of the apartment building back then, so unless someone comes forward, we may never know. And this ties in with the next theory of the mysterious blonde woman holding a notebook seen on Nicole's floor about 45 minutes before she disappeared. Some believe she was connected to Nicole's abduction, and police did seek her out as a possible witness, but she's never been located. And again, without video surveillance or cameras, unless someone does come forward, we may never know if this woman was related to Nicole's abduction, or even if she had witnessed something that morning. It seems suspicious to me that this woman never came forward in all of these years, if she had not been up to anything wrong. You know, you would think that you would want to help in the abduction of a small child. Maybe it's possible the woman didn't know the police were looking for her, but really, that's highly unlikely. unless she was living under a rock somewhere. I mean, the media coverage was all over this case. Or maybe the woman was afraid to come forward for whatever reason. I don't know, but it is very suspicious. Another theory involves the church that Nicole was involved in. At the time that Nicole vanished, her father was part of a fundamental church called the Worldwide Church of God. So was my best friend. So was my husband, actually. And I liken this church to a cult, and let me tell you that that could be another whole video entirely. But Nicole's father, Art, has been reported to say that he thought Nicole could have been kidnapped by members of the church. Art has also reportedly suggested that someone connected to his ex-wife may have taken Nicole to avoid him gaining custody. Now, I could not find any reputable information on either one of these theories. All I can say is that it's possible. I mean, especially for Nicole's father to say that. There must have been a reason for him to suggest this. Another popular theory was that Nicole was sold into an international sex trafficking ring, and that's why her pictures were reportedly identified by the Belgian organization, known as Fondation Princesse de Croix et Massimo Lancelotte. I mean, it's possible. We all know this sort of thing does happen a lot more than most people would like to admit. Another plausible theory is that Nicole's abduction was related to a cluster of other missing girls in the area around the same time. Actually, in Toronto in the 1980s and into the early 90s, a shocking number of young girls went missing. Just to name a few of these girls, Christine Jessup, who was 9, went missing from her home the October before Nicole vanished. Sharon Morningstar Keenan, also 9, was abducted in January 1983, and Allison Parrott had disappeared in July of 1986 at age 11. All of these girls turned up dead, and their bodies were found except for Nicole. Now, the people responsible for these young girls' murders have been identified, but it is still possible that there is a connection to Nicole's abduction. And without Nicole's body or any sort of DNA or any kind of evidence for that matter, it really is impossible to say. But it is not entirely out of the realm of possibilities. At the end of the day, we are left with so many questions. What happened to Nicole when she left her apartment? Did she make it to the elevator? Did she make it to the lobby? Who took Nicole? And where did they take Nicole in the apartment building? We may never know any of these answers unless someone comes forward with any information they may know. And, that being said, any information, big or small, could be the missing piece of this puzzle. It's never too late to contact police, and if you think you may have some information, please contact the 22 Division investigators at 416-808-2205 or Crime Stoppers anonymously at 416-222-TIPS or 8477. You can also contact them online at 222tips.com or text capital TOR and your message to crimes 274637. Thank you so much for listening to this case today. If you would like to hear more cases like this, please subscribe to my channel, hit the thumbs up button, and maybe if you would be so kind as to leave a nice comment down below. If you would like to suggest cases to me, you can email me at unjustcrimes@gmail.com.